Hello and welcome everyone to the penultimate round of the BUSR Summer Championship, taking us around the world in ACC, iRacing, F1 23 and Dirt Rally 2.0. This week in ACC, our drivers take on the fabled Imola circuit, situated in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy. Great laps from Anna Foster and James White put them into P2 and P3 respectively. However, it was Conor McCullough in his podium sim racing Porsche who took pole position to start both races in our fascinating sprint format, beating Foster by just over a tenth and a half. In race 1, the drivers were treated to a night race, and as the lights went out, the start saw some of the very intense battles across the field, with Ishar making early headway through the field with a braking maneuver against Josh Perrott, bringing Shah up to P8. The battle for the lead between McCullough and Foster ended in heartbreak for Foster as the move into the Variante Alta chicane resulted in a spin for her McLaren, giving McCullough some breathing room and Foster with it all to do. With 3 minutes left of the race though, Marley Watts, having set rapid laps to catch up to McCullough, finally saw an opportunity to take the lead and did just that, making a braking move into the Ravazza. And with that, Marley Watts took a measured win in race 1, with Conor McCullough and Jimmy Lynn occupying the remaining podium slots. Race 2 began with chaos, sending race leader McCullough into the barriers and Foster into the gravel, allowing Jimmy Lynn to scythe his way through and take the race lead to start off with. Joe Scher had blistering pace and was gaining positions, but losing the rear and taking a spin through the corner would set him back some time. As the other drivers pitted, he would make it into P1 and would lead the race until pitting himself, but he was able to build a gap large enough to come out in P2. His race would end short, however, when he hit a sausage curb and was sent his car into the wall and retiring shortly after. Owen Goldsmith and Ishar would battle, with Goldsmith almost losing it on the main straight, but would still gain the position when Ishar looped it through the first corner. In the end, it would be Jimmy Lynn who crossed the finish line in P1, and the fight to the end would put Josh Perrott in P2 and Callum Porter in P3. Next week, the drivers will head to Kyalami into the final round for the fight for the championship. With iRacing taking a break last week, we jump forward to Okayama for the penultimate round. An all-alumni grid will see Peter Staver qualify on pole, with Lewis Jordan Charles joining him on the front row in P2. Marley Watts and Cameron Gold will be on the second row. Staver would lead the start of the first race with battles behind, but Staver would lose the rear going into the second lap, which would allow everyone to pass him, and Watts would gain the lead. Jordan Charles would gain the lead from Watts and keeping it to the end of the race. Further back, however, Gold and Watts would come together with only minutes left to the race, while Jordan Charles and Staver would endure mysterious engine issues, allowing Watts and Gold to catch back up. The final lap would have great battles, but Jordan Charles would come across the line in P1, with Staver taking second, and a last corner incident left Gold in P4, allowing Watts to take the final podium positions in P3. The feature race started with Jordan Charles leading the pack, but a poor exit out of a corner put him down into P4, allowing Watts to take the lead. He would keep the lead for long, however, when Gold would get a move done, meaning that everyone had led at some point in the race. Watts would come off the track when he dipped his wheels into the grass on the inside of the last corner, and upon rejoining would wipe out himself and Jordan Charles. Taking to the pits for repairs, the mysterious engine troubles returned, this time for Gold and Staver, and they would pit for fresh rubber. The masterful strategy meant that when they would come out the pits, everyone was in the same order they were in prior to the initial incident. Gold would continue to lead, but his race would soon end when he went wide, losing control and going headfirst into the barrier, and the car was too damaged to continue. In the end, Jordan Charles would make it 2 of 2 as he narrowly finished in P1 again, with Watts taking P2 and Staver in P3. Next week, the drivers will visit the postponed Oran Park in Australia, taking the MX-5s out for one last time in this season. The F1 drivers are headed to a rainy Suzuka for a sprint weekend, as qualifying would see Joe top the timing boards, with Jackerai in P2 and Geek in P3. The sprint race would start cleanly, making it to the first race where there wasn't a safety car on the first lap. With not much happening towards the front, Joe was able to pull a gap ahead of the rest of the pack, but it would soon close back up when Wilson lost it on the second sector, bringing out the expected safety car. Joe would have a fantastic restart and would have over a second gap after the first corner. With only a couple laps to go, it would be easy work for him as he crossed the finish line to take the sprint race victory, with Jackerai in P2 and Geek in P3. No changes in position from qualifying. But the race would end with another bang, as there was incidents between Callum Truesdale and Charles Simmons across the finish line. Rain did not ease for the start of the main race, but didn't stop Geek from getting a move done around the outside of Jackerai into P2. But of course, following BUSR tradition, a virtual safety car was brought out when Callum Truesdale went out of the race going through the spoon curve. Charles Simmons would struggle at the back, having trouble keeping the car straight, and had a hairy moment through the Denga corner, and after a pit stop, would inevitably retire from the race. Charles' retirement partway up the pit lane would also bring out a safety car, and some drivers, including Jackerai in P3, would pit for fresher tyres. This allowed Mad Dog to get into P3, but Dasher would steal that on the race restart and shortly make a move on Geek, getting himself into P2. Once again, the racing wouldn't last long as Joe spun on the exit of Dunlop and out of the race, taking Jackerai with him, and in doing so, the safety car came out again. When the race restarted again, Mad Dog and Geek would soon be quick to move up the grid, while Adine would suffer a collision, putting himself into last. Mad Dog would chase down Dasher with blistering pace on the fresher rubber, and after a long chase would finally get the move done down into the main straight going into the final lap. The superb drive would put them into P1, with Dasher taking P2 and Geek in P3, the top three being 30 seconds clear of the rest of the pack, proving their deservingness of the podium. Next week, the drivers will head into the final round at Interlagos for one final battle around the fabled Brazilian circuit. This week's event in Dirt Rally takes us to Onopoya, the fastest stage in the world of rallying. From the Yellow House jump of the Karistista hairpin, this iconic stage takes us through some of Finland's famous gravel highways in the 2-litre WRC beasts of the 2000s. Ed Hackshaw would find himself out of the event at the first stage as he totaled his 2001 Impreza, and Perkins would follow suit in stage 5. Jack Noller wouldn't have the greatest starts to the rally as he lost some time in the final stages, allowing Doonskull to run away in the lead. Penny Dobbins and Asher Vai would battle for second place throughout the stages, but that battle would come to a close when Asher Vai suffered a rally-ending crash on the power stage. A small mistake at the end of the power stage cost Doom the stage win, allowing Noller to snatch up some extra points, but by only being in second place overall meant that Doom can still come to the maximum total of 157 championship points next week for the championship win if Noller doesn't score more than 23, a second place finish or fourth with the power stage win. Elsewhere, going into the final round at the Baumholder Military Complex in Germany, Charlotte, Ed, and Glinty will fight for the 7th overall. That brings a close to our recap of the 5th week in the BUSR Summer Championship. You can join us on fun at busr.gg/discord and find our socials down in our description. Our leagues are open to students and alumni, and casual events open to all. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week for the final round of our BUSR Championships.